What is going on? James here from Frontline Conditioning and FLC Grappling. The big question today is, are there specific exercises for jiu-jitsu athletes that we might do in the gym? I'm going to save you some time. The answer is no. Have a great day. No, but seriously, when it comes to specific exercises, this is a question that comes up a lot, actually, because I think that everyone is really into trying to find the perfect formula for anything that they do. And that's cool, right? Like, I want people to experiment a little bit. I want people to feel like, they might find something that's going to work really well compared to something else, and they maybe uncovered something. And that's kind of the point of how there is nothing hyper specific when it comes to what's going to get you the most results, because you are an individual. And while there might be similarities across a training program for different athletes, there are going to be some things that are going to be different. And so we're going to explore two types of variations where you might find things that are going to be vastly different from athlete to athlete and things that are going to be pretty similar athlete to athlete. So the first thing I would say is, if you are someone whose main issue is being under-muscled, you're an athlete where athleticism is kind of teetering in the mid-range, you might be very new to lifting. Someone would look at you and say, oh, that guy can put on a few pounds of muscle. They don't look very jacked. So we want to get you pretty jacked. And the nice thing about getting jacked and the nice thing about hypertrophy training is that it is a fantastic way to train if you have never trained in the gym before. There is almost zero reason for you to focus just on strength training or like powerlifting if you've never lifted weights before. And one of the biggest reasons why you wouldn't do that is because it puts a tremendous amount of stress on your joints and soft tissue, tendons, ligaments when you lift in a strength exclusive block. You don't need to do that, right? You can focus on higher reps, anywhere even in like a standard hypertrophy range of 8 to 12, and you'll not only see great progress building muscle because you got those newbie gains, but you're actually still going to get strong. You'll still get strong within that rep range, which will translate to you feeling strong overall on the mats as well. So in a hypertrophy style training, this is where we have the most amount of variation. This is where we have the most amount of nuance. And the way I do it with my athletes is I don't think of things in terms of, specific exercises that I want to train. I think of things in terms of muscle groups and categories, because there are going to be some movements and exercises that feel really good on the target muscle. You get a great pump, you feel it working very hard, and it doesn't create a ton of systemic fatigue, meaning it doesn't tire you out as you do it before that local muscle gets tired out. And the reason why we want to work in categories is for an additional couple of reasons. The first one being, again, we want to find what works really well for you. So if I told someone who needed to grow their chest, just do bench press because it works really well for me and it's obviously a great chest exercise, well, if someone, number one, is new to lifting, or even if they're kind of intermediate, they might find like, hey, I do this bench. Yeah, I kind of feel my pecs, but I feel my shoulder bugging me a little bit. I might feel my triceps and biceps giving out kind of. I might feel a little bit of pain. I might not even feel a huge pump. It just really gets me tired when I do it. That's a really good indication that, hey man, that exercise is not for you. And if we explore things a little bit differently and maybe change to dumbbell presses, maybe we change to a different type of bar, maybe we change to a machine press, you think all of a sudden, holy crap, now I actually feel what I should be feeling, and I can do this all day. I can feel my chest strain tremendously, I get a huge pump, and I'm not even tired. I can do 6, 7, 8 sets of this. That's a fantastic exercise for you if you feel that way. But you would never really get a chance to explore that for yourself if you were only focused on, this exercise equals this result, because it very rarely does that. There's a bunch of different variations. And the second reason why categories are going to be a great example is because for my athletes that travel a lot for competition and might have to work out of different gyms, it's not always convenient. And a lot of gyms might not have the same types of equipment available, or they might be going at busy times where the machines that they do or should be using are unavailable because someone else is just kind of sitting on it and texting, and they don't want to go up to them and be like, hey man, I really got to use that. So we think of it in terms of categories because one exercise can almost always be swapped out for a different exercise that targets the same muscle group. So in terms of your ability to work out on the fly and still get an amazing workout, thinking about things in categories is fantastic. For consistent growth over time in a way that gets you to see progress, but not be so fatigued that you can kind of have to down-regulate your jiu-jitsu training, which is the whole point of why you're doing this, is to improve that, it's another reason why thinking about things in exercise categories and muscle groups is good. And then the final reason, which is a bit more advanced, is because when we think of, and in my head, when I'm calculating total volume that I have my athletes lifting, I categorize it in muscle groups as well. Because I might not just think about it as like, oh, here's the volume for chest, but I might think, what are my, yes, I'll do chest, but what is the overall volume of all my extensors, of all my pressing muscles, the front delts, the pecs, the triceps, like what does that whole volume look like? Because it's very easy to get caught up in trying to build a perfect program where all these muscle groups get the right amount of stimulation. But if you don't think of how they connect as well and how they all work towards the same thing, you might overdo it with some sets of volume that might lead to too much fatigue down the road. Now, when we think about strength training, because maybe you're a bit more of an intermediate athlete and we have this opportunity to work on strength, you're already pretty well muscled, you have some experience in the gym, we can load things effectively. Now, the variations are going to be a bit different. Now we're going to be a bit more specific because strength is really dependent on you becoming efficient with the lift that you're doing. It is very task specific. Because if you change exercises so often like you would in hypertrophy, you never really get a chance to become used to that exercise enough to build enough movement competency and efficiency to load it progressively over time. So when we're in a strength block, my athletes are going to notice that there is less variation in the main movements we're trying to get strong in. In fact, there could be no variation for like 6 months at a time. For 24 weeks of training, the main lifts will never change. And the accessory lifts will change depending on what we're trying to do. And that's because I want to build that movement efficiency. I want to build that movement capacity so that we can load things appropriately over time and you can actually express that in strength. I can see you getting stronger. The numbers are going to go up. It also gives you a bit of an ability to predictably warm up and know what you're going to be hitting that day. You get comfortable in the movements. You learn how to progress to them on your own. Now, this does offer a little bit of a challenge when we start to travel in that same example that I gave before. But you can sort of offset this by choosing things that are easier to get around. Now, often you'll see this in like compound lifts and like squats and deadlifts and stuff like that. But this can easily be switched for also machine variations. Now, the only thing I would say with it is you want to try to switch it for a movement that is very, very close to the movement pattern that you're doing in the strength movement. Besides those, though, you have a lot of opportunity to change things up in a training program depending on how you see fit. Then from there, you can think about, well, what are the reps I want to hit? What rep range makes me feel good? And if it's something that you want to explore and you guys are really interested in, I can do a full video on where the rep ranges fit in and how I choose specific rep ranges for specific muscle groups and exercises over time to make sure that you're constantly seeing progress. If you like this, as always, like and share it, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be exploding with this stuff and it's only going to be getting better from here. I'll see you next time.